And we keep quoting words that sound good, but does not take us anywhere. God is moving ahead. God is pushing the edges. God is moving higher. And therefore, those who follow our God will go there as well. So I see this as an invitation on the one hand, move beyond where we are. I see it also as a demand that if we're going to be true to our callings and true to the God who is our God, we must go to the next level. Not only in worship, but technology also. And my God, I'm young, and I've come from a time when there were no telephones and no televisions, no stages, no lights, no mics, and Lord have mercy, look at us now. Next level. Well, let me move on with this message today. Mountains have always intrigued humankind over the years. Long before airplanes could take us above the clouds and the mountains, people climbed mountains or were awed by mountains because mountains suggest something of sacred and holy. Some mountains are where revelations take place. Mountains are where one is able to see beyond where one is. So the text reports that after 8 days, Jesus, having taught and called his disciples, having fed 5,000 men, excluding women and children, Jesus took 3 of his disciples, Peter, James, and John, up a mountain. Luke, in fact, tells us his intent, whereas Mark and Matthew do not say what his intent was. They simply said he took them up the mountain. But Luke says he went up to pray. Went up to pray, went up to pray, went up to pray, went up to pray on this mountain. Jesus is on a mission towards Calvary. He's moving to another level. And if you like me, I think that Jesus was having difficulty with that mission. Difficulty moving to a stage where his life was now going to be on the line. There was some doubt, some wonders in him, and so he decides to go up on the mountain. Takes with him Peter, James, and John up the mountain. Now that leads me to my first point today. On the mountaintop, next level says you got to have communion with God. That is essential. If we're going to the next level, there has to be conversation with the one who is our God. Jesus is in conversation with his Father on the mountaintop. And he has with him Peter, James, and John. Now, they are, some would call his inner circle. They're not perfect. They're fallible. They're men like you and I who had their good points, but also have their shortcomings. But that suggests to me that anytime you go on the next level, you need some company. This ministry is hard enough, lonely enough to walk by yourself, but you need some company, even if the folk around you are not perfect. In fact, we're not perfect, but you need some company keepers. Peter, that rather impetuous person who talks sometimes before he needs to talk, but at other times gets himself right even when he doesn't know he's right. Peter, then James and John, sons of thunder, brothers like many of us who want to go high, rise high, but sometimes without paying the cost. James and John, Peter are with Jesus on the mountaintop. Jesus is having prayer with his Father. And the record is, while Jesus is communing with God, his face changes. Mark and Matthew says a transfiguration took place. But Luke doesn't say that. Luke simply says, following Moses' journey up the mountain in Exodus 24, simply says his face was changed and his clothing became dazzling color. In other words, something about being in God's presence ought to change our countenance. And I think it wasn't just his outside, it was the inside which affected his outside. You do know that's how it works. That is, when you and I spend company with God, that is our time with God that transforms our exterior, that we might engage that which is external to us. And so they were on the mountain, Peter, James, and John, and Jesus was transfigured. His face changed. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't have mountaintop experiences every day. Most of my days are ordinary. But every now and then, I have these mysterious, tremendous encounters. Every now and then. I don't know if I can stand it every day. But every now and then you need an experience that takes you beyond the ordinary so that you might experience that which is extraordinary. And on the mountaintop, Jesus was transfigured. Face changed. Peter, James, and John looking on. And then not only are Peter and James and John are with him, but the text says that from the ancient world, from the transcendent world, enters Elijah and Moses, or Moses and Elijah.